All right, we are live here. Hello, everybody. Let me click go live over here on Instagram. It takes a minute for it to kick in. All right, there we go. Excellent.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody. Hello. I am super appreciative of everybody that's here, whether you're watching this recorded or live. Appreciate you giving us part of your day and joining us for this conversation. I am very excited for having a guest today who has helped me in multiple levels and become a dear friend. And I don't even know what we're going to talk about because there are so many different directions we could take. So this is exciting. I met Sara through, you've heard me talk about people have heard me talk about joining the Super Connector Mastermind. And Sara is a coach in there. And as a result of that, really dug deep into some things. And a lot of my self-discovery has been bounced off of her as I figured things out. And have just continued to be in awe of your ability to balance so many different roles and responsibilities, not just as a professional, but as a person in general, and the compassion that you bring to what you do, your willingness to be flexible and patient. I know that I'm not the only person that says this. People can go online and see all kinds of people saying this about you, but I really have been grateful. So publicly want to say thank you for all that you have brought to my growth and my learning. And of course, thank you for being here today. I'm excited to introduce you to people that don't know you, and for those that do know you, to get to enjoy you sharing a little bit more about yourself. So why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hi, Deb. Thank you so much for having me. This is really an honor, and I appreciate what you said. Thank you. And I feel the same about you. I just enjoy our friendship so much. So I'm Sara Reed. I am the Director of Member Success over at Super Connector Media. And I absolutely adore and love what I do. I get to work with all kinds of different entrepreneurs every day, having coaching conversations, talking about PR and marketing, as well as just helping them to scale their businesses. And I also have a podcast of my own, which is all about books. So it's called Reading Between the Lines. And I host this with my mom. And we chat about our favorite books, make recommendations. I rope my brother in sometimes, and we chat about specific themes in novels. And we just have a lot of fun. So whether anyone is listening or not, that depends. But I love that we are saving these moments in time, these conversations for future generations in our family to listen to.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say it. You're right, because no matter what, it's going to be a collection of conversations. I mean, I'm a fan, and it covers across bases, right? I was an English teacher for 13 years, so I love literature. Yes. And I think that literature helps educate us. It helps us have conversations. So whether you're curled up in the corner reading a book by yourself or participating in a book club, there's just so many ways that we can gain new perspective from literature. And so I love watching it and watching the way that you guys pull different pieces out and bounce ideas off of each other. And you've had some great guests on there as well. So
yes, you were one. You were the first one.
When I said it, I realized I didn't mean it that way, but thank you very much. No, and I appreciated that. Yeah. I mean, what an honor to have been the first one. I think, and obviously for those who don't know, the Reading Between the Lines is a play on obviously Sara's last name. So it's very clever. But you dig deep into literature. And I think if I think about parallels for you and other things that you do in our interactions, both as a friend, as a coach, whether you're coaching somebody on PR or marketing or just on following through on goals, there's the reading between the lines. There's what's there, what's written, and there's the interpretation. Do you think that's always something? Yeah. Like when you were a kid, were you always kind of the person that was reading into situations? You're nodding. So you're already yep. Maybe talk a little bit about that. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like let me start over. Since I was a child, I always feel like the comments that I get about people's perspective of me is that I'm very calm, or I have a very calming presence. And I think that I do. I mean, everybody's got a temper, and I can also be really silly and I can get mad. But in general, I do feel like I have a calming perspective. I also feel like I can be a safe place for people and for friends to share their thoughts and perspectives. As I grew older, I began to collect friends from different walks of life. And I was quite proud that they were all varying different backgrounds and personalities. I love collecting people with rich backgrounds, and rich meaning like interesting, but rich backgrounds, but also who have different perspectives and views on life, so that I'm learning, because that's what interests me, is always that curiosity about other people and how they were brought up and how they were raised and what they want to do in the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, the human experience. Well, and that's what literature is, right? I mean, even when you're reading something fictional, there's experiences that drive, that's where those stories come from, that whether it's the conversation or a particular setting. I've, never talked to anybody that's written a book that hasn't said it was based on some part of their actual life, whether it was fiction or autobiographical, right?
Yes.
So the human experience, and I can see that. And I think, one of the things I've noticed both on your podcast, I see that, but I'd already noticed it prior to, is that you're very good at the pause, right? Like, you're not a quick responder. It's not that you're not able to come up with an answer, but you're very good at like, somebody asks a question and let me not just say the first thing that pops into my head. Now, obviously, let me say that I've seen you in situations where there's a lot going on and urgent responses are needed, and you have been able to deliver on that. So it's not that like you are a deer in the headlights and don't respond when needed, but you're very good at like, let me think about this for a minute. And I remember that one of the first conversations we had, there was like what you just did, where you were nodding your head, right? Not to make you self-conscious. Now you're going to be constantly aware of nod your head, but you were really processing, right? And then I stopped and you didn't respond immediately. And that was one of our first interactions. So I was kind of like, wondering what's going on, like what's happening in Sarah's head right now. And what was going on was you were thinking, let me consider different pieces of this before I respond to it fully. That's a gift. But it's also something you have to practice. And that's not something that I would say like everybody has. Like, that's definitely a very specific gift.
I think my husband would disagree with you, but I appreciate, but I try, thank you. And I do try to listen, and I do try to pause and think about what I'm going to say. I also find that it's really important, especially on a professional level, like with Super Connector, the conversations that I'm having with people are so, so important to them. This is their livelihood. This is their passion. And I want to respect and be completely mindful of my response and how it's going to affect them. Because I could be flippant and just make a casual remark like, well, I wouldn't do that. I would do this. I can't say that, because everything is, how everyone is perceiving their work or how they work with their clients. It really is, it's so different. There's a big range of emotions and importance happening here. So I try to be thoughtful. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's neat the way that you said that, because you're right. It's not just, it's a few things, right? It's not just about what you say. It is about how you say it. I think the fact that you're within your house, right? There's different perspectives of you in that regard. Like, I would expect that. It's just like with our children, right? Our children go to school and they could be great all day, and then they come home and they might have kind of a short temper with you. This is a safe space. So we're going to tend to like let some of our guard down. I mean, we still try to be mindful, but it is again a place where we can let go. But you're right, the weight of that. And I think with parenting too, I can connect on that. I mean, both with coaching, right? So I relate to that on the coaching and consulting level when I'm working with, whether it's individuals or organizations, same thing. Like, this isn't just a conversation. It's a conversation that has implications for this person just asked this question. How you respond, even if you retract or change your mind, could impact the way that they perceive themselves and people around them. So you're absolutely. But when you were saying it, it made me think about, as a parent, and times where your child comes to you, and we know now as adults, like that situation is not going to ultimately have this really dramatic impact on their future. But in that moment, for your child, it does, right? And I think that when we pause and we kind of say like, wait a minute, let me think about this. Like, if they're saying they had the worst day ever, we might be thinking that is not the worst day ever, but it feels like the worst day ever.
Yeah.
And we can do that, and we step back and we go, okay, that's a child. But really, all of us, like you just said, when we're having those conversations with people, we're opening up, we're being vulnerable, we're sharing a piece of our professional or personal growth.
Yeah.
We're looking for somebody to be cognizant of the importance and the weight. And I think that you just even saying that, like, that's a beautiful thing for people to know, that like, I'm pausing because I want you to know how important what you're doing is. And everybody really wants to feel valued in that way.
I think so. I think part of my role at Super Connector as well is making people feel seen. And to do that, you have to have a lot of compassion. And so that's something that I practice. Now, going back to parenting, my child, who is 13, she will, it's interesting because she will come, not so much anymore. Past few years, like she would come home from school and be like, today was the worst day ever. And or I would say, how was your day? And she was like, terrible. And I would try to get her to reframe it, have more of a perspective. I'm like, oh no, honey, it could have been a lot worse. Let's talk about what actually went wrong. But trying to help her to figure out like how to reframe things. Let's look at the stuff that did go right and let's put more emphasis on that. And was the stuff that went terrible, could that have been avoided, or was that just life, and trying to give her more skills to prepare herself for the years ahead.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, right? And again, across parenting or roles, it's that balancing act between like the emotions valid, because we often can't control what we feel. We're going to feel that, but like, how do we then take it and do with that? So sometimes we need to kind of process through the like, I feel awful, myself included. Like I'll have moments where I'll like actually physically walk in my room and like flop down on my bed because I want to feel that feeling of like, ugh. And then you go, okay, now let me break this down and think about what are the action steps that I need to take. And that's effective for maneuvering through any type of change. But you said be seen, and I want to not forget because you posted this morning and I was like, first off, I was like, that's good, right? Like I roll with the fact that most of the time when I try to do anything like that, I just look awkward, and I'm like, that's kind of going to just be part of my brand, like awkward. That Deb, it's cool. I'm like okay with it. I don't even mean that in a self-effacing way. Like if it makes somebody laugh, like that's great. But I was like, that was like so like it had this like comical, and yet you were like, I'm like, oh, she's like on point there. But you referenced
channeling my inner Uma Thurman.
The mascara, and I was like, and I had said to you before we jumped on that I was saying to my husband how it's interesting. I don't often wear a lot of makeup. I will on occasion put makeup on, but mascara is one of those things that like you could put it on and put nothing else on, and because it like highlights your eyes, which the windows to the soul, and it really just kind of if you're a person who wants to create that effect, mascara is a way that you can do that. And you mentioned a certain brand, and I was like, do tell me, like, I want to know about this. And you're like, well, actually, I will share. So I would love to know more about the mascara.
Our dear friend, Jenny Cohen, recommended a type of false lash that is made for Asians. And I was like, oh, thanks. Why? And she's like, well, I think these would be a great fit for your eye shape. And I went to the website and I realized that this was Hannah Cho Beauty, and beautiful, beautiful Hannah Cho. My God, she's a gorgeous woman. This is her company. She has created these false lashes again for Asian women and representing Asians. However, they're made for people with monolids or hooded eyes. And I just recently even learned that I have a hooded eye. I didn't know what that was before previously. Like, why does some makeup techniques not work for me? Well, it's because half my eyelid disappears when my eyes are open. So, so Hannah makes these beautiful lashes, and she has a program right now where she's asking if you want to be a lash ambassador, you can apply. And I applied and I was accepted. And I'm going to just joke about this briefly, but I mean, I've posted previously about Hannah on my own Instagram channel, so she is aware that I'm a white girl. So I appreciate very much that she still picked me to represent the brand and be an ambassador for them, because there are these lashes work really well for me, I think, and they're comfortable and they fit much better than other lashes meant for all types of eye shapes. So that's my little spiel about Hannah Cho.
Well, now I need to know more. So hooded eye. So I don't know what that is. Maybe like, can you tell me what that is? Like,
I would say like, I'll get closer. Don't look too close, but like, I'll get closer. Like my eyes, I have my orbital bone kind of hangs over. And so my eyelid is just kind of hooded, like it kind of evaporates, kind of disappears into itself. And I'll notice, if you put on So like, it's happening right now. I think I've got a little bit of like smudging happening from my eyeliner because my eyelids are like really rolling back in there and touching. Some people don't have this problem. And other people have monolids. Most Asian backgrounds, you're going to have monolids where you don't see any of the eyelid. So in my case, you see a partial bit of my lid, versus a monolid where you're not going to see any. And I can't demonstrate that. But you can ask a makeup artist, or you can go online and try to figure out from different versions of examples of eye shapes, what type of eye shape you have. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful, it's a great brand. I'm just over the moon about them.
Well, you know how I love to learn, right? So I love to learn, and I love to learn about all different things, whether it's a topic that I've ever engaged in before in the past or not. And I think, one of the things that is fascinating to me about makeup. So when I grew up, my mom was not a big makeup wearer. So I think what I would imagine in a lot of households becomes the point at which your mom is kind of teaching you how to use makeup.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of my friends were using makeup, and I can remember like going over to friends' houses and they'd be like, "Oh, we're going to put makeup on you." It was almost like, I can't think of the word, but like, it was like novel because Deb doesn't normally wear makeup. I wasn't opposed to it. It just hadn't been part of my norm. And so, then you get into adulthood, and I'm very much a proponent of like, if you like to wear makeup, wear makeup. And if you don't like to wear makeup, don't wear makeup, right? Like everybody's going to find their range of what works for them and don't works for them. Don't works for them. Wow. That, ladies and gentlemen, was Deb's epic English teacher background.
Yeah, I'm starting to doubt that.
So what don't work for them, what doesn't work for them. And so, finding out, again, same thing as with fashion, right? Find what makes you feel good about yourself. And so when you find something, like I've talked to people who will be like, "Oh, I never like to wear makeup, but I found this and it's very light," or it's either very light in texture, or I like the color of it, or it, the experimentation. I think that's what you're talking about, right? Like this isn't something you normally would have looked up specifically because you're not Asian, but just in general, you wouldn't have thought of it. And yet it's a small thing that you can do that for you makes you feel, when you look in the mirror, it accents your eyes, and you have beautiful eyes. So I think that's one of the things that I love about
I'm all for ways to make you feel more confident, and things that are easy lifts. They don't need to be difficult. I especially love a natural, simple beauty aesthetic. I don't like to wear a lot of makeup or do crazy, beautiful rainbow eyeshadow. Like I don't have the patience or the time for that, but some people do, and that's great. And I love it on them. For me, I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do it. But I also am a fan of doing simple beauty that enhances your natural beauty, but also things that are easy. So whether that's like a lip stain or just penciling in your eyebrows, or as you said, like putting some mascara on before you go to the grocery store. If that makes you feel more confident, more put together, then you're going to behave in a more confident and more elegant way, which I think is always a good thing. So.
Yeah, and what you said too ties in, right? So here it is, all that full circle stuff of all these different things you do, and that comment that you made about simple things that make a big difference for you because of the confidence level, right? And that ties in with PR, that ties in with marketing, that ties in with makeup, fashion, ties in with even parenting and small incremental changes, right? Those things you can do, because I think sometimes we think like, I'm here and I want to be here, and it feels so far away,
daunting.
Right? But you start doing those incremental things, and then it doesn't feel so far away. So whether it's a beauty technique or, fashion technique, or something that you can do with your social media presence, a little incremental change that brings you a sense of confidence and makes you feel like you're moving forward in whatever way it is that is your goal. It catapults you, because you're like, "Ooh, increment. I just made a change. This is awesome. I can do this."
Yes. So my one of my bosses, Jen Gottlieb, she talks about this a lot. Having a small win is going to help you build momentum for yourself. And that's something that I have over the past 2 or 3 years of working with Jen, something that I really have taken to heart. I also think it's a principle that's based in Atomic Habits, the book by James Clear, is it, I think? And, doing small things, just being 1% better or putting in 1% more effort than you did yesterday to create great habits for yourself that are going to make you feel good about the choices you're making for yourself and the goals that you have for yourself, and helping you to hit those loftier ones down the line. With PR, that's also something that is an incredibly huge subject, and it is overwhelming and difficult, the idea of pitching the media or establishing yourself as having credibility. And I love one of the things that I love talking about with our members and our clients is small ways to start building some of that PR credibility, how to reach out, do little steps every day, like 20-minute chunks of pitching activities that will help you to get those goals or those big accolades, those big media wins.
Yeah, I mean, that summarizes really the journey that I took, right? I mean, and I think,
yes,
and it's recognizing too, it's a numbers game, and that's hard because when you're feeling like, what I want to get to this thing, right? It can feel so overwhelming, but like it's repetition, right? It's being available, it's discovering stuff, it's being open to feedback, it's making those types of opportunities, and then once you start to do it, then the people start to reach out to you because they see, oh, this person's responsive. This person is able to provide a credible quote.
Yeah.
So you develop that reputation, and then it kind of carries on itself. But prior to that, it can feel a little bit, I don't want to say like you're not moving forward, because it's not that you're not moving forward. It can feel very slow, like you're stuck in the quagmire. You know, some of the only conversations you're having are with people who may or may not be their publication, or they themselves may or may not be that well known. But ultimately, if you look at it as every connection and every conversation you have is momentum and is going to be a potential opportunity, that's when you get what you're talking about, right? Which is putting in that little bit of time each day. And that was kind of what I started to see. So then, like, you were just going to respond. So I want to let you say what you were going to say.
I was to say, as you know, I deal with entrepreneurs I deal with them. It sounds like I have the privilege of working.
For sure. There's a whole mindset.
I have the privilege of working with entrepreneurs who are people who mostly are working alone and creating this brand or this business for themselves. And they're doing all the things and wearing all the hats, and they're overwhelmed and they're stressed. And I have been there, and I have run businesses myself. And it is really hard to know what activity to do to spend time on that's going to actually move the needle and have you make some money. So yeah, I like the idea of just these small and incremental things that will help you build, again, that momentum, as you were saying.
Yeah. And you know, across industries, so because of my professional journey and the different things that I've done, I've got a cool variety of experiences working in corporate global companies, working with individual entrepreneurs, right? But there are some things that are in common across everything, whether I'm working with somebody life coaching or I'm working with the CEO of a company, is that putting in little bits of time, right? When people will come and they'll say, like, this is the change I want, it always starts with what is one small change that you can start now, right now, this minute. Sometimes it's having the conversation with me. I'll be like, congratulations, we're having this conversation. You just started. Like, the process is in place. We're moving forward here, and then committing to that on a regular basis. And I think sometimes, like, people will talk about, like, why do New Year's resolutions, you know, why do so many, I forget what the percentage of New Year's resolutions that don't go through to fruition is. A lot of times people make them this big, like, I'm going to lose this amount of pounds. I'm going to gain this amount of followers. Those lofty goals are excellent, but like, that can't be the end. That can't be the only thing. There should be these incremental milestones, like you talked about with Jen, like the mini wins. There was something that I started doing. I don't know when. I was a teacher, so it was definitely something I did as a teacher. But then I started bringing it into consulting. I called it the Gold Star. And so the reason that I started doing it as a consultant is I remembered when I was teaching 11th grade, every once in a while I'd have stickers. So this is 11th graders, so we're talking 16, 17-year-olds. And I put like a sticker on a quiz or a test or something like that, or like maybe I'd walk around and like hand out stickers to the students, and like they genuinely were excited. Now, I'm not saying that they were like going home and like marking on their calendar for like all eternity to remember they got a sticker, but there was a noted change in disposition and emotion by this gesture, right? Like, kids would be like, oh my God, I got the sticker, right? So I would find ways, even if somebody wasn't necessarily an academic person and they weren't really necessarily doing well on a grade perspective in the class, like, what's something else I can give you a sticker from? Hey, great job reading out loud today, right?
Yeah.
And they really recognized it. And I thought, we really all like those things that just those moments of pause to acknowledge something. So as a consultant at some point one day, kind of jokingly, I said to somebody, I'm like, I'm going to give you a gold star. And I don't remember when I started doing it. And the person responded like, oh, yay. They were all excited and kind of joked. So I started doing that on a regular basis to the point that like one of the clients I worked with, I had this like sheet that I would give out to people with these little digital gold stars. And people hung them up and people really like them. And why, right? It sounds funny, but what you just said, everybody likes to acknowledge that there are little wins happening. Yeah. And sometimes those little wins aren't even as little as we make them out to be.
That's true.
Like moving forward, trying to be your best is always epic.
It is always epic. It's hard. I love that you did that. And I love that this was like a digital format, because I think that's really, it's making my wheels turn. I'm like, how could we do a virtual version of that? Because it does help people to like look backward and see the progress, because we're always so in the present or so looking ahead at where we're not. And we forget about all the good stuff and the good effort we're putting in, and we're too hard on ourselves. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all like celebrating together. So I think like I love when I watch somebody else get celebrated. I like to be celebrated as well. And I like to celebrate other people, like all versions of celebration, as long as there's equity and fairness, which we know sometimes it's not the case. So you do need to be mindful of that if you're going to, kind of as a sidebar to people, if you're going to implement this in an organization, you do need to make sure that you're going to have consistency and fairness. And then it's not just going to be like, you're giving out, gold stars or whatever you give out to the people that you've already decided that you like the best, right? It should be about acknowledging people's things. And another activity I did that kind of reminds me of this, that I actually got emotional. We had something tragic happen in the classroom that I won't go down just because I think it's a longer story, but we had something tragic happen. And in the aftermath of it all, trying to kind of process through with the class because we had lost a student, there's just, it just makes you put so many things in perspective, right? And recognition and what did or didn't happen, and who are my friends and who are not my friends. Like all of these conversations become really apparent when adolescents, all of us, but I think particularly that time, that age range, because there's almost that invincibility that when something like that happens, you're like, it just throws everything off.
Yeah.
And so I did this thing where we, with the teacher that I taught with, where we made up these like certificates for people, right? And it was very specific. So it was a process. We were like, okay, over the course of the next several weeks, we're going to really pay attention so that it can be meaningful. I don't just want to give out a student and be like, does great participation. I wanted every student to have a certificate that was about something very specific they did. I saw you hold the door open for this person. I remembered. And then once everybody had kind of gotten these, we gave them out. And like, the celebration piece and watching them acknowledge it and notice that like everything is part of making a difference. And like, that's really what you're talking about, those like letting people be able to look back and see not just I got the grade I wanted, I earned the paycheck I wanted, but I did something nice and it mattered.
And it mattered. That's the thing. Like it does matter, whether it's in your business or it matters to you or it matters to, your family. Or to a client, it is important to acknowledge that for sure.
Yeah. What is one way that you in your household with your daughter? How do you acknowledge? Is it and you don't have to share too, but is it a verbal? Is it do you do an ice cream thing? Is there something that's kind of a tradition in your household for acknowledging?
We eat a lot of ice cream at our house. I am really lucky. I feel like my child is extremely thoughtful and conscientious and always going out of her way to help other people. And so I feel like I'm always thanking her. And sometimes I wonder if I take her for granted too, when she pitches in to help with something or says something kind when she knows that I'm struggling. I try to tell her on a daily basis, especially like first thing in the morning, whether she's at my house or at her dad's house, verbally tell her or text her that I'm thinking about her and that she matters to me and that I see her, like that I'm thinking about her and that she's in my mind. Because I think that is something that everybody wants to have. And I think everyone thrives when they are, again, when they feel seen. So just as a general practice, I try to acknowledge her existence on a daily basis and make her feel loved. But yes, we do go out for ice cream a lot. So
yeah, we do. I mean, when they were little, I've shared this story before, but it's funny, and it's actually part of one of my keynote talks. We had this reward system. I don't like the word reward system. Acknowledgement system. They have these little clear plastic containers, and we decorated them with stickers. So they got stickers, and they decorated them with stickers. And we had this other container that had like cotton balls and little fluffy balls in it and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And so what I would say is, go add a cotton ball to the container like for something really good, right? And then when the container was filled up, then we would do something, right? And that we could sometimes we would
love that.
And at one point, I remember like we were having like not a great day, and I was gonna be like, take some out, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I don't feel like you should lose what you earned, right? Like, I'm sure in a heated moment as a parent, you want to like take the lid off and just dump them all out and be like, no more cotton balls. Well, whatever the case was, so this system, and the kids really liked it. Well, we were like out in public, and we were just having a really good day, and I said something like, you guys have really been cooperative today, and they were like, oh, can we get cotton balls when we get home? And I was like, yeah. And there was like people standing around, and they're like listening to this conversation. Like my kids are like, oh, really good. Do we get cotton balls when we get home? And I'm thinking like, and you could see the look on their faces, but even in the moment, but more so in retrospect, thinking about like how that really correlates with a lot of sometimes in our lives, right? Like the cotton balls were an indicator of the bigger picture. And we do really want to make sure that whether it's organizationally or familially, in friendships, right, across the dynamics where we interact with people, that we don't let the thing we're using as acknowledgement to supersede the actual recognition of the act itself. Like what I want them to gain from that is not, oh, I just filled up my thing with cotton balls. What I want them to gain from that is you exhibited something that I recognized and saw in you, and I want you to know that I see it. But I always thought it was funny that like these people are just like looking at me like, oh, you give your kids cotton balls as a reward. That's fantastic. Like,
that's crazy.
It is a little crazy. But it worked. And I still have their containers like down in our playroom. I still have the little plastic containers. I just can't get rid of them. I feel like I should start putting things in them, and then like when they move out someday, give them their little, cotton ball container with notes in it or something. I'm sure they'll be really thrilled about that. They'll be like, oh, good. That's what I want to display in my house.
that makes me think about something that our other friend, Mina, Grace does. Mina has a jar that she has full of like, I don't know if it's like little love notes to herself, whether she's just written them or it's like something that other people have said that she's then copied down, and she has it in a jar. And when she feels crummy, she just like reaches into the jar and pulls out a thing. We should all do that.
Great idea. Yeah. And she symbolically has a jar of those love notes for everybody in the world too, because I feel like she's always sprinkling those love notes all over the place. I could barely hit. Mina's on, so I see you, Mina. I see you right now.
Mina.
Mina. I just looked over my Instagram screen and she's on there. I barely hit submit to a social media post, and she's there with some positive. And I think Mina, who's now listening to this, and I hope enjoying this because she deserves the love fest that's about to follow, really is a remarkable example of, taking opportunities where they exist to pour the goodness out into the world and the incredible impact that it makes. I mean, there are times when I'm not that I'm like wallowing in self-pity, but I'm like not having a great day. And like, there's a comment from Mina. You do that as well, Sarah. I see, you definitely provide feedback to people as well in that way. But yeah, Mina has taken the challenges she has encountered throughout her life. You're very welcome. She has taken the challenges she's encountered throughout her life and has put them into this bucket of love that she is just going to pour out into the world. And I'm grateful.
Absolutely.
I'm grateful for her. And I'm grateful for, while we obviously share an admiration and a love for her, there are many ways that people can do that. And I posted last night, I made this very simple cartoon last night, which took longer than it probably looks like it took to have this person giving a person a heart. But as I was doing it, and I was sitting at my computer because I knew what I wanted to create, and I knew I wanted like the bottom to have the waves and have this little gesture. And I wanted it to be simple. I didn't want it to be a big, long thing, because that simple gesture that every single person can do. Everybody has an opportunity. I don't know if I can say daily, but I want to say almost daily, everybody has an opportunity that they can create. They can do a simple or subtle thing that creates dramatic and incredible impact. Kindness multiplies.
Yeah. I was just, you're making me think about your You Matter movement and brand. So if you haven't picked up any of Deb's merch for You Matter, you should. I should have worn my shirt. That's a missed opportunity there.
No, that's all right. It's the eyelashes are making this.
I just appreciate that you put so much effort into kindness and also helping people to feel seen or to feel appreciated, and that they matter. Something that you and I have talked about at great length off recording is mental health. And I think that's something that, that's something that I suffer with is mental health and depression. But and maybe that's what makes me try to help other people be seen, because I struggle at times and know what that feels like, and it's dreadful. So when I see people like Mina, who are just so effervescent and so full of that love and energy, I really aspire to be more like that. I sometimes feel like I'm Eeyore, and I, like when I have a dose of Mina in my life, I just so appreciate like that ray of sunshine that she brings, and that high level of energy. Because I'm not a very high level energy person, but I love Mina for that. And I wish that we had more Minas out there. So.
Yeah, this is good. I like giving all these shout outs. This is fun. So I will say too, another person. So Christina Walker, who we were talking about prior to the call, right? And we know same thing. I have admired in watching the fact that she's juggling all of these different projects across her personal and her business and all of these different things. Yeah. And the mindfulness with which she puts into making sure that everybody that's involved in whatever way, shape, or form that they're involved feel like they're being heard, feel like they're feeling valued, right? Like it's not just if everybody's operating the way they need to be operated, that I'm just going to go, because that happens a lot in companies. And a lot of times when I'll come in and there's some type of thing, it's because that's happening. Like nobody's complained, so everything is just go. But you have to take the time to say like, hey, everybody good. I want to make sure that everybody feels good, feels included. And she does a really good job of that, which is, again, something that we can do standing in line at the grocery store, sitting at the dinner table, taking a walk with your friends, or in an organization setting, is taking the time to kind of make that check-in, and not just assume that because there's not anybody complaining that everything is okay.
I think that is so smart. That really does stem or lead into leadership. And whether that's, you leading your team or like Christina, who has a team, and how she leads, whether she knows it or not, I feel like she's a great leader because she does really take that time to listen or get feedback. And she's continually striving, I think, for that. When I've worked for some really outstanding leaders, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I worked at Stanford University for the petroleum engineering department. And so all these people in oil, and we had sponsors from Shell and BP. And I was able to work for the chairman of the department, and he was so kind and so thoughtful when, he was in a high level of leadership and a high level of influence. And even someone like me, who was at the time just a secretary or just an admin, he would seek out my opinion about things, which made me feel really valued, despite my lower status in the grand scheme of things. And that made a big difference. And I feel like that's a huge impact for great leaders. Something that great leaders do that is a great impact.
Yeah. One of the biggest tips that I have for every organization, that when they say like, we want to grow more rapidly, we want to increase our profit, we want people to be more effective, like pretty much all of these different things that you would aspire to. Yeah. One of the key things is look at the resources you already have. Because a lot of times they're like, well, I need to hire, or I need to do this, or we need to do this. And it's like, you may, but a lot of times, to your point, we're looking at things through that lens of just, and there is no just. In this world, there's no just, right? Like you referenced the You Matter, like that's the basis of it from both a mental health perspective and an organizational perspective. Every person matters equally, period. There's no exception to that. It doesn't matter what the organization is or what the situation is. The role may be different, but the mattering never changes. And, when you talked about the mental health piece, and to your point, because we've talked, we both have talked openly about it as well, but we've also shared offline. And in those dark places, a lot of times you don't necessarily recognize what it is that's the thing that's going to change that feeling. You just know that you feel bad, right? Like it takes a while. And I think even as an adult, while I know some things that trigger that I have to be cautious of, like, okay, the old hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? Make sure you're hydrated, make sure you're getting enough sleep. You've got to
have a snack. Yeah.
Right. You got to take care of your basic needs. There are times when things outside of our control, or because we're rushed, we don't pay attention, happen, and we get ourselves into those dark places, right?
Yeah.
And so if all of us committed, every single one of us committed to recognizing the mattering, to calling that out when people are in those places and aren't able to verbalize what it is they need, we can collectively bring that out.
Right? Yeah. I'm smirking because were you finished? Oh,
yes. Thank you.
I'm smirking because I was thinking about yesterday. To be delicate, I got an email from somebody who was not very happy, and they were taking it out a little bit on another team member that I have, who is a huge help to me, and I adore her and would move mountains for her. And I was not happy about this other person taking out their frustration on my coworker, and I got onto Slack and I was going to put something snarky like, oh, well, that person is just, ignore them. They're just blah, blah. And then I thought, oh, I guess I could be the bigger person here. And I did respond to my coworker and said, I appreciate how you have responded so kindly back to this person. And I think they're just frustrated because technology is not their thing and they're feeling a little insecure right now. And you've addressed this with them so well. So thank you. Wonderful. And my coworker replied right back and was like, thank you. And it was just a nice way to take a negative situation and flip it into a positive. And I was so proud of myself. But that's not always the way I take it. Gold star. Yeah. I was very proud of myself that I took a moment to pause and think about like how am I demonstrating, like how is my behavior affecting others, and what am I demonstrating? Am I leading appropriately? So.
Yeah, modeling. Absolutely. I love that. And I think it does. I mean, we can, it's okay. I will actually complete a sentence at some point here. If we liken it to, this just popped into my head, when a toddler falls, assuming they're not drastically hurt, right? Like obviously but if you right? Like a lot of times the child will panic.
Yeah.
We think of that as a child, but all of us in our core are operating on a place of, am I safe? Am I safe, right? Like we're constantly going to be assessing, am I safe? And there's a variety of ways that we can look at safety, from food and financial safety, et cetera, but am I safe? And so if the people around us respond in a way that makes us realize we're safe, then that's what we're going to lean into. So, I mean, I can't, none of us can say that we do it perfectly, but like I've had friends reference the fact that I don't road rage. And it's because I always think of the times where I've been in a car in a hurry somewhere because of something that's going on, and how emotionally distracted I am, or how many times I have, I'm not a text while driving, but like my phone buzzes and I look quick to see who just called. And then I realize I just looked away from the road. Like how many times have I done things because whatever the circumstances were, that could have resulted in something bad and they didn't, or that I've been distracted. So I really try to, when somebody cuts me off or does something, I wonder what's going on in their day. Yeah. If there's not anything terrible going on in their day and they're generally speaking to be mean, well, I won't have hurt anything, because there's nothing that I'm going to do to change that situation other than potentially de-escalate it and then model, right? So it's like in the city, one person hits their horn and the next thing you know, 30 people are hitting their horns. So I don't want to be the horn hitter that triggers that. I want to be the person that makes people go all right, I'm not, the 30 seconds or sooner that I'm going to get there are really not going to make the difference.
That's a new t-shirt slogan. Don't be the horn hitter.
You know what? You are so right. That I'm writing it down, Sarah. be the horn hitter. I can see it in my head too. I've got a whole list of t-shirt slogans. I really need to get them onto the actual t-shirts. Anyway, before I get a final thought from you that I want you to leave with anybody, because we could talk for hours. First, tell everybody how to follow you, about your, your podcast, social media, where to watch all the great things that you're doing now and will be doing, because I know big things coming.
Thanks. I would say if you enjoy reading fiction, this is the place for you. So reading between the lines, you can follow us on Instagram at Reading Between the Lines Pod, and reading is spelled with 2 E's. So we're there on Instagram, and then on Instagram, there's all the links to the podcast. The podcast is everywhere. And just in general, come hang out hey, Super Connector Media is a great place to learn skills if you're an entrepreneur. So you can always find me on Instagram and connect with me there, and I'll give you more details.
Absolutely. And I will say, I mean, we've talked about this before, but you mentioned, right, I was the first. You were very kind to have me on as your first guest, even though poetry isn't really the focus of your podcast, but you were beautiful to have that. But I have short stories. I haven't been able to get them finished yet that I'm working on. And I've kind of said to myself, if Sara wants, she will be the first podcast I will go on when that book was launched. And
I love that.
I'm actually curious myself. So they're mostly written, but they were written over the course of many years. And I want to go back and I want to change something. And there's one character in a story that I'm curious about. So I'm not quite sure where she's going yet. She's still talking to me. So I want to wait to see where she goes. So I'm actually curious to see. And then when it's finished, I'm curious to see, I almost want to tell you to read the beginning, don't read the end, and talk and tell me what you think is going to happen. And then read the second half of it. Because, she's kind of an interesting character. And I'm curious to see what's
did that with another author where I had interviewed him. I was only about halfway through the book, and he was like, "That's great. Tell me what you think of this character so far." And then at the end, tell me what you think about the end of that character. So it was great. But yeah, I would love to have you. So yes, please let me know.
Yeah. I love watching people develop both in real life and in fiction.
100%.
Seeing the miracle that we all are. So, all right. Final thought for everybody, Sara. What do you want to let everybody know? Funny, insightful, whatever you think would be good to leave everybody with.
I would say, I'm just going to go with the reading route. I would say, if you haven't picked up a book lately, that's something that you might want to do. Yes, some people think of it as escapism, but it is another way to understand humanity a little bit better and seeing other people's perspectives of how they develop characters and how these characters move throughout the world, because that's the author's way of communicating how they see the world. So just something to think about is picking up a book.
Yeah, I love it. And I will, even though normally I end on that, I would say you've got some lists on your Instagram. You post some recommendations from other people, some famous people, some of your own. You had a viral reel go that then stemmed into Hugh Grant, Drew Barrymore, and did you do Chalamet's list? I don't know if you did a list.
Oh, I forgot about him. Yeah, I'll do Timothy.
Okay.
I'll do Timothy.
I think you actually have some great suggestions on there. And then I salivate sometimes because you post the pictures of the stacks of books, and I am a bibliophile in every way, shape, and form. I do have a Kindle, but man, I love a book, an actual book in my hand. Turn that page, the crispness, the smell.
Yeah,
goosebumps.
Nothing like it.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, get out there and read and discover new places, new people, and check out Sara and all the goodness that she has, both through her podcast, through her own social media, and as she mentioned, through Super Connector Media, which you all know I have been closely connected with on my journey. I appreciate all of you for joining us today, as always. And Sara, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing so openly, both on this platform, but just in general, giving of yourself with your tips. More than one occasion, being willing to say to me, maybe you need to actually send the pitch in order to find out what's going to happen.
You never know.
All right. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Take care. You're very welcome. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.